In this video, we're going to talk about how to multiply complex numbers through an example. So let's say we have 2 plus 3i, and we want to multiply that by 4 minus 5i. So what we're going to do is write 2 plus 3i, and then 4 minus 5i, like this. And we do want to be very careful. Make sure we have parentheses around 2 plus 3i and around 4 minus 5i, because we're multiplying this entire number, 2 plus 3i, by this entire number, 4 minus 5i. Now, what we do from here is a lot like foiling in algebra. So if you have something like x plus 2 times x minus 7, what you do to simplify that is you foil it, and we're going to pretty much do the same thing here. First, outer, inner, last. So if we do first, that's going to be 2 times 4. So we're going to have 2 times 4. And then outer is going to be the 2 multiplied by negative 5i. So that's going to give us minus 2 times 5i. Okay, and this minus sign here comes from this minus sign here because we have 2 times negative 5i. So that's minus 2 times 5i. Okay, again, this minus sign here is this minus sign here. And then inner, what's the inner? The inner is the plus 3i and the 4 here. Okay, so that's inner plus 3i and the 4. So that's going to give us plus 3i times 4. And then last is going to be plus 3i times negative 5i. So the plus 3i multiplied by the negative 5i. That's going to give us minus 3i times 5i. And again, this minus sign here comes from this minus sign right here. Positive 3i times a negative 5i is going to give us a negative sign. Okay, negative 3i times 5i. Now we just simplify. So when we simplify, what do we get? 2 times 4 is 8. Minus 2 times 5i. So 2 is a real number, 5i is not, but that's not really going to complicate things because we can still say 2 times 5. Okay, but when we say 2 times 5i, that's really the same thing as 2 times 5 times I. And we know 2 times 5 is 10. So this is really just 10 times I, which is more commonly written as just 10i. Okay, so 2 times 5i is 10i. Okay, so far we have 8 minus 10i. And then we have plus 3i times 4. So similarly, that's going to give us plus 12i. And then here we have minus 3i times 5i. So we can rewrite that as minus 3 times 5 times I times I. Okay, 3i times 5i. 3i times 5i is just 3 times I times 5 times I. And we can just rewrite that as 3 times 5 times I times I. So that's what we're doing here. Okay. Now, is it really necessary to show all that in that much detail? No, but I do want to highlight what's going on here. So 8 minus 10i plus 12i. Well, 8 is just 8. Can't do anything with that yet. Minus 10i plus 12i, what does that give us? That gives us a plus 2i. Now, what's happening over here? Well, 3 times 5, we have minus 3 times 5. That's going to give us minus 15. And what's I times I? Well, that's I squared. But what is I squared? Well, remember, I squared, if we come off to the side here, remember that I squared, the whole thing with complex numbers, that's negative 1. I squared is negative 1. So then really, this is going to be 8 plus 2i minus 15 times negative 1, because I squared is negative 1. So then this is 8 plus 2i. And then minus 15 times negative 1, that's going to give us a plus 15. And then finally, that simplifies to 23 plus 2i, because 8 plus 15 is 23, and then we just have the 2i just kind of hanging out here by itself. So if we take 2 plus 3i and multiply that by 4 minus 5i, then our final result is going to be 23 plus 2i. And remember, the way to multiply complex numbers is just like this. We're just going to FOIL. Okay? So first, outer, inner, and last, just like you do in algebra with x's and y's and things like that. So anyway, 23 plus 2i, that's our answer, and that's one example of multiplying two complex numbers.